The letter trembled in Nora Caldwell's hands as the stagecoach rattled over another rut in the dusty Texas road, and she wondered if jumping from the moving vehicle might be less terrifying than meeting the stranger who awaited her in Presidio. She had answered an advertisement placed by a rancher named Harrison Irving, exchanging 3 letters filled with pleasantries and promises before agreeing to this journey that now felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff with her eyes closed. The August heat of 1878 pressed through the canvas sides of the coach, making her gray traveling dress stick to her skin, and she thought of the cool Philadelphia parlor she had left behind, the disappointed faces of her family who could not understand why their educated daughter would flee to the wilds of Texas to marry a man she had never met. The other passenger, an older woman traveling to visit her son in El Paso, had fallen asleep an hour ago, her head bobbing with each lurch of the coach. Nora envied her ability to rest, but sleep had eluded her for the past 3 nights as doubt crept deeper into her heart with each mile that separated her from everything familiar. She read Harrison's last letter again, though she had memorized every word. His handwriting was neat, controlled, speaking of his ranch along the Rio Grande, of cattle and wide open spaces, of needing a partner to share the responsibilities and rewards of frontier life. He had not written flowery declarations of love, which she appreciated for its honesty, but now she wondered if perhaps some romance might have steadied her nerves. What had she done? 23 years old with a teaching certificate and prospects for a respectable position at a girls' school, yet she had thrown it all away because of what? Restlessness. The suffocating predictability of her mother's social calendar. The parade of suitable Philadelphia gentlemen who looked at her as a decorative piece to display in their dining rooms. She pressed her forehead against the window frame, watching the harsh landscape roll past, so different from the green hills of Pennsylvania. This land looked angry, all thorns and rocks and relentless sun, and she felt her mistake settling into her bones like an illness. The stagecoach driver's shout interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Presidio, folks, 30 minutes out. Nora's stomach clenched. Her hands moved automatically to smooth her hair, though the dust and heat had long since destroyed any semblance of the neat arrangement she had started with that morning. She pinched her cheeks for color, then felt foolish for the vanity. What did it matter how she looked? She was delivering herself like a package to a man who had purchased her presence with promises written in ink. The town emerged from the desert like a mirage, low, adobe buildings clustered along the Rio Grande, the Mexican village of Ojinaga visible just across the water. The stage rolled down the main street, past a general store, a saloon, a church with a bell tower, and various other establishments that made up the small border community. Nora saw curious faces turn to watch the coach's arrival, and she shrank back from the window. Everything here would be public knowledge within hours. The new mail-order bride for Harrison Irving would be examined and discussed over dinner tables throughout Presidio. The coach lurched to a stop in front of the stage depot, and the driver climbed down to open the door. "End of the line, madam," he said, offering his hand to help her descend. Her legs felt unsteady after hours of sitting, and she had to grip his arm to keep from stumbling. The older woman disembarked behind her, immediately greeted by a younger man who must be her son. They embraced warmly, and Nora felt a pang of loneliness so sharp it nearly brought tears to her eyes. She stood beside her trunk and carpetbag, scanning the handful of people gathered near the depot. A rancher in dusty clothes loading supplies into a wagon. 2 Mexican women with baskets talking in rapid Spanish. A group of men outside the saloon. But no one approached her, no one stepped forward with recognition in their eyes. Minutes passed. The older woman and her son departed in a buckboard. The rancher finished loading and drove away. The stagecoach driver secured the mail and prepared to continue south. Still, no one came. "You waiting for someone, miss?" the station agent asked, stepping out of the small office. "Yes, Harrison Irving. He was supposed to meet the afternoon stage." The man's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral in a way that made Nora's anxiety spike. "Harrison Irving, you say?" "Yes, I am expected. We have an arrangement." The words felt shameful in her mouth, an admission of desperation. "Well now, that is peculiar." The agent scratched his jaw. "Irving's ranch is about 8 miles north of here, up along the river. He does not come to town much, keeps to himself mostly." "Are you certain he knew you were arriving today?" Nora pulled out the letter, pointing to the date. "August 15th. Today. He specifically mentioned the afternoon stage." The agent studied the letter, then shook his head. "Mail can be uncertain out here, madam. Perhaps his letter to you crossed with your letter to him, got the dates confused, or perhaps he is running late. Ranch work does not always cooperate with schedules. What should I do?" The question emerged smaller than she intended, and she hated the helplessness in her own voice. "There is a boarding house just down the street, run by Mrs. Henderson. Clean rooms, respectable. You could wait there, send word out to the Irving place." He hesitated. "Though I should mention, I have not seen Harrison Irving in town for near about 6 weeks. Could be he is away, went to Fort Davis or somewhere on business. 6 weeks. Nora's chest constricted. Is there anyone who would know? Someone who might have information about Mr. Irving's whereabouts? Could ask at the saloon, though that is no place for a lady. Or you might inquire with Marshal Garrett when he makes his evening rounds." The agent looked uncomfortable now, clearly wishing this problem would solve itself without his involvement. Before Nora could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats made them both turn. A rider appeared at the end of the street, moving at an easy canter that kicked up small clouds of dust. Even from a distance, Nora could see he sat his horse with the unconscious grace of someone born to the saddle, his broad-brimmed hat shading his face. As he drew closer, she noticed the way other people on the street acknowledged him with nods and raised hands, marking him as someone known and respected in this community. The rider reined in near the depot, and Nora found herself looking up at a man who seemed carved from the same harsh landscape surrounding them. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly where it touched his collar. His eyes were the color of strong coffee, and they held an intensity that made her feel simultaneously seen and exposed. This was not Harrison Irving, she knew instinctively. The letters had described a man of 45, settled and established. This cowboy radiated a restless energy despite his easy posture. "Afternoon, Tom," he said to the station agent, his voice a low drawl that carried the rhythm of Texas. Then his gaze shifted to Nora, and she saw surprise flicker across his features. "Madam." "Henry," Tom greeted him with evident relief. "This young lady is looking for Harrison Irving, says she was supposed to meet him here today." The cowboy's expression changed, something like concern crossing his face. He swung down from his horse with fluid economy of movement, pulling off his hat as he approached. "Harrison Irving, madam. Are you certain?" "Of course I am certain." Nora's worry was transmuting into irritation. "I have his letters right here. We have been corresponding for 2 months. He asked me to come to Presidio to be his wife, and I have traveled nearly 2,000 miles to honor that agreement." Understanding dawned in those dark eyes, followed by something that might have been pity. "Madam, I am mighty sorry to tell you this, but Harrison Irving passed away 4 weeks ago. Snake bite while he was checking fence line in the back pasture. He was dead before his foreman could get him back to the house. The words hit Nora like a physical blow. The street seemed to tilt beneath her feet, and she felt the color drain from her face. Dead. Harrison Irving was dead, had been dead for a month, while she traveled toward him with a trunk full of hopes and a head full of second thoughts. The station agent caught her elbow as she swayed, guiding her to a bench outside the depot. "Easy now, miss," Tom said. "Put your head down if you feel faint." But Nora did not feel faint. She felt furious at Harrison Irving for dying and leaving her stranded, at herself for making this idiotic journey, at the universe for confirming that, yes, this had been a terrible mistake from the beginning. Humiliation burned through her, hot and bitter. She had abandoned her family, her prospects, her entire life, to travel to this God-forsaken corner of Texas for a man who was already in the ground. "I am fine," she managed, though her voice shook. "Thank you. I just need a moment." The cowboy crouched in front of her, bringing his eyes level with hers. Up close, she could see the concern etched in the lines around his mouth, the genuine distress in his expression. "Madam, I am Henry Ingram. I worked for Mr. Irving, was his neighbor to the south. This is a terrible shock, and I am right sorry to be the one delivering it. If there is anything I can do to help, you just say the word." Nora barked out a laugh that held no humor. "Unless you can turn back time or transport me home to Philadelphia, I cannot imagine what help you might offer, Mr. Ingram. I am stranded in a town I have never seen, knowing no one, with barely enough money for a week's lodging." She pressed her hands to her face, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. This was a mistake. I knew it was a mistake, and I did it anyway, and now I am paying the price for my foolishness. "Now hold on," Henry said, his voice gentle but firm. "You are not foolish for answering a call to adventure, for wanting something more than what you had. That takes courage, not foolishness. The circumstances went wrong, but that does not make you wrong." She looked at him through her fingers, this stranger offering comfort in the ruins of her plans. "It certainly feels like I am wrong. Wrong place, wrong decision, wrong everything. The Irving place is still there, running under the supervision of the foreman until the estate gets settled," Henry continued. "Harrison's nearest relation is a nephew in Houston who has not shown much interest in claiming the property. There are contracts to honor, cattle to tend. The ranch needs to keep operating." He hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. "What I am saying is, there might be work available if you need to earn your way back east. The foreman's wife could use help with the house, the cooking for the hands. It is not what you signed up for, but it would give you time to figure out your next step." Tom, the station agent, nodded. "That is right decent of you, Henry, offering to help, though the lady might prefer to wire her folks, have them send train fare home." The suggestion landed like a stone in Nora's stomach. Wire her family, admit her catastrophic failure, return home to pitying looks and "I told you so" conversations, to a future even more constricted than before, because now she would be the girl who ran off to marry a stranger and came crawling back in disgrace. "No." The word emerged with more force than she intended. "I am not wiring anyone. I came here to make a new life, and while the particulars have changed rather dramatically, I still want that. If there is work available, I will take it. I will earn my keep and my future, not beg for rescue." Henry's expression shifted, and she thought she saw something like approval in his eyes. "All right then. Give me an hour to settle some business in town, and I will ride you out to the Irving place. My ranch is adjacent, so I know the foreman well. We will get you sorted. I cannot impose on you like this, Mr. Ingram. You have already been far kinder than the situation requires. Out here, madam, we help each other or we do not survive. There is no imposition in doing what is right. He stood, settling his hat back on his head. Besides, Harrison was a good man and a good neighbor. He would want someone to look after you, see you settled safe. I can at least do that for his memory. Nora studied this cowboy who had appeared as if summoned by her desperation, offering solutions instead of pity. There was something solid about him, a quality of steadiness that seemed at odds with the restless energy she had first perceived. She realized she had no choice but to trust him, at least for now. "Thank you, Mr. Ingram. I accept your help." "Henry," he corrected with a slight smile. "Out here we do not stand much on formality, and you are, Nora Caldwell, late of Philadelphia, currently of nowhere in particular." "Well, Miss Caldwell, currently of Presidio, Texas. Let me get you some refreshment while we wait. Tom, can you watch her things? I will be back shortly." He led her down the street to a small restaurant, Mexican-owned, with a few tables inside and out. The proprietor, a round woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair, greeted Henry with obvious warmth, speaking in rapid Spanish before switching to English when she noticed Nora. "Welcome, welcome. Sit, please. Henry, your usual." "And whatever the lady would like, Rosa." Nora had not realized how hungry she was until the smell of cooking food reached her. She ordered tentatively, and Rosa beamed, disappearing into the kitchen. For a moment, they sat in silence, and Nora felt the enormity of the day settling over her like a weight. "This must all seem very strange to you," Henry said, "after Philadelphia. Everything is strange. The land, the heat, the situation." She looked at him directly. "You said Mr. Irving was a good man. Did you know him well? Well enough?" He had been ranching here about 15 years, built up a solid operation. Kept to himself mostly, liked his solitude, but he was fair in his dealings and helped his neighbors when needed. Never married, which I suppose is why he placed that advertisement. Did he mention it to you?" "That he had written to someone back east." Henry shook his head. "Not to me, but like I said, Harrison was private. I heard about it from his foreman after, when we were going through his affairs." He paused. "Can I ask why you answered the advertisement? Seems like a woman with your education and bearing would have had other options." The question was more perceptive than Nora expected, and she considered deflecting before deciding honesty had its place. "I had options. Suitable options, according to my family. Marry a lawyer or a banker, host dinner parties, produce children, grow old in a parlor discussing the weather. It all felt like dying slowly." She traced a pattern on the table with her finger. "I wanted something real, something that mattered. I thought perhaps out here, away from all the social expectations and predetermined paths, I might find that. And now I think I am an idiot who confused desperation for adventure." Rosa returned with plates of food, fragrant and colorful, unlike anything Nora had eaten before. Henry showed her how to use the tortillas, and despite her emotional turmoil, she found herself eating with genuine appetite. The flavors were bold and complex, and for a few minutes, the act of eating displaced her anxiety. "You are not an idiot," Henry said finally. "And you are not wrong about there being something real out here. Life on the frontier does not hide itself behind parlor manners. It is hard and honest, and if you can stand up to it, it gives back more than it takes." He met her eyes. "You made it this far, which took strength. Do not lose that strength now just because the path turned in an unexpected direction." His words reached something in her, some core of determination that had carried her onto that train in Philadelphia despite her family's protests. She had made a choice, however flawed, and she could make more choices. She was not trapped, not defeated, not unless she chose to be. "Tell me about the ranch," she said. "The Irving place. What will I find there?" Henry leaned back, his expression easing. "About 2,000 acres along the river, good grazing land. Harrison ran about 300 head of cattle, had 4 hands working for him plus the foreman. The foreman is named Jack Thornton, been with Harrison from the start. Good man, knows the operation inside out. His wife Maria keeps the house and cooks for the hands. They have a daughter, Sarah, about 16. And your ranch, smaller operation, about 1,200 acres. I run it alone mostly, hire help when I need it for roundup or drives. He smiled slightly. I am what you might call the struggling young rancher type, trying to build something from not much at all. How long have you been here? 5 years. Came out from Louisiana with my last dollar and a lot of ambition. Bought land that nobody else wanted because the water access was uncertain and the terrain was difficult. Spent the first 3 years proving everyone right about it being a bad investment, but I am starting to turn a corner. There was pride in his voice, and Nora found herself curious about this man who had inserted himself into her disaster with such casual competence. What made you leave Louisiana? His expression shuddered slightly. Family complications. Sometimes the best thing you can do is start fresh somewhere new. He stood, pulling some coins from his pocket to leave on the table. Which is what you are doing in your own way. Ready to head out. Daylight is burning and it is about an hour's ride to the ranch. The trip to the Irving Ranch required borrowing a wagon from the livery, as Nora's trunk was too heavy for a pack horse. Henry loaded her belongings with easy strength, then helped her up onto the wagon seat before mounting his own horse. They left Presidio heading north, following a rough road that ran parallel to the Rio Grande. The landscape was overwhelming in its emptiness. Vast stretches of scrubland broken by rocky outcroppings and the green ribbon of vegetation along the river. Mountains rose in the distance, hazy in the afternoon heat. Nora had never experienced such openness, such absence of human structures and order. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Henry rode alongside the wagon, pointing out landmarks and explaining the geography. That is Cathedral Mountain to the west. River runs pretty consistent through here, which is why this area supports ranching. Further from the water, it is harder going. Is it always this hot? He laughed. This is August. Come summer, this will seem downright pleasant in comparison. I cannot imagine anything less pleasant than this heat. You will acclimate. The human body is remarkably adaptable. He glanced at her. If you decide to stay, that is. I have not yet decided whether I will stay or go, Nora admitted. Right now, I am simply trying to survive the day. They rode in comfortable silence for a stretch, and Nora found herself stealing glances at her companion. He sat his horse with unconscious ease, moving with the animal's rhythm as if they were a single unit. There was something appealing about his competence, the quiet confidence with which he navigated this harsh landscape. She wondered what family complications had driven him from Louisiana, what dreams sustained him through 3 years of failure before his luck began to turn. There, Henry said, pointing ahead. That is the boundary of Irving land. A fence line stretched away to the east, and soon Nora could see buildings in the distance. The ranch headquarters sat on a slight rise overlooking the river, a collection of structures arranged around a central yard. The main house was adobe, low and sprawling with a covered porch running along the front. Behind it stood a barn, bunkhouse, and various outbuildings. As they approached, a man emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. He was perhaps 50, weathered and lean, with a face that had seen considerable sun and hardship. His eyes went from Henry to Nora, curiosity evident. "Afternoon, Jack," Henry called. "I brought someone who is going to be mighty surprised to hear you are running this place." Jack walked over as Henry reined in his horse. Up close, Nora could see the intelligence in his eyes, the careful assessment. And who might that be? This is Miss Nora Caldwell from Philadelphia. She traveled all this way to marry Harrison Irving, not knowing he had passed. Jack's face transformed, moving through shock to sympathy in the space of a heartbeat. Lord have mercy. Miss Caldwell, I am so sorry. We had no idea, no way to contact you and tell you not to come. Nora descended from the wagon, grateful to stand on solid ground. Mr. Thornton, I understand. The circumstances are unfortunate, but Mr. Ingram suggested you might have work available. I am capable and willing to earn my keep while I determine my next steps. A woman appeared in the doorway of the main house, dark-haired and sturdy with kind eyes. Jack, what is happening? Henry, is everything all right? Maria, come meet Miss Caldwell. This situation needs a woman's touch to sort out. Over the next hour, Nora told her story again, this time to Jack and Maria Thornton in the cool interior of the ranch house. Maria listened with growing distress, her hands clasped tight in her lap, while Jack shook his head at the cruel timing of it all. Of course you will stay, Maria said firmly when Nora finished. This was to be your home. Harrison's death does not change that. We have a spare room, and Lord knows I could use help managing this household. With 4 ranch hands and Jack to feed, plus all the washing and mending and maintaining, I am run off my feet most days. I do not want charity, Nora said quietly. I will work for my room and board. It is not charity if you are working, Jack pointed out. And Maria is right about needing the help. The wages would not be much, but it would give you a grubstake for when you decide what comes next. Nora felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. Then I accept with gratitude. Henry stood, preparing to take his leave. I will leave you folks to get settled. Miss Caldwell, if you need anything, my place is about 3 miles south along the river road. Jack knows how to find me, Mr. Ingram. Nora rose as well, extending her hand. Thank you for everything. You took a stranger's disaster and turned it into something manageable. I will not forget that kindness. His hand was rough, calloused from hard work, but his grip was gentle. Welcome to Texas, Miss Caldwell. I suspect you are going to do just fine here. After Henry left, Maria showed Nora to a small bedroom off the main living area. It was simple but clean, with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand. A window overlooked the river valley, and late afternoon light painted the landscape in shades of amber and gold. I know it is not fancy, Maria said, hovering in the doorway. It is perfect, Nora replied honestly. More than I have any right to expect. That night, lying in bed in the darkness of a Texas ranch house, listening to unfamiliar sounds and breathing air that tasted different from anything she had known, Nora took stock of her situation. She had run toward what she thought was one kind of destiny and collided instead with something entirely unexpected. Harrison Irving was dead, her carefully laid plans demolished, yet somehow she had landed in a place of relative safety with work to occupy her and time to figure out her future. And there was Henry Ingram, the cowboy who had stepped in without hesitation to help a stranger in need. She thought of his words at the restaurant, about life on the frontier being hard and honest, about giving back more than it took. Perhaps her mistake was not in coming to Texas. Perhaps her mistake was in thinking destiny arrived in the form you expected. The days began to establish a rhythm. Nora rose before dawn to help Maria prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, learning to cook in quantities she had never imagined. After the men headed out to their work, she and Maria tackled the endless tasks of maintaining the household. Washing, mending, cleaning, preserving food, tending the kitchen garden. The work was physical in a way Nora had never experienced, and the first week left her so exhausted she could barely stay awake after supper. But gradually her body adapted. Her hands, soft from a life of books and embroidery, developed calluses. Her back stopped aching from bending over the washboard. She learned which plants were herbs and which were weeds, how to judge when bread dough had risen enough, how to patch a work shirt so the mend would hold under strain. Maria was patient, teaching without condescension, and Nora found herself genuinely liking the older woman. Maria had married Jack 20 years ago and followed him through a succession of ranches and cattle operations before they settled here with Harrison Irving. Her daughter Sarah was a bright girl, hungry for knowledge, and Nora began teaching her in the evenings, working through the few books available and discussing everything from mathematics to literature. The ranch hands were respectful, keeping their distance but greeting her politely when their paths crossed. Nora learned their names and a bit about each one. Tom was the oldest, a former Confederate soldier who did not talk about the war. Billy was barely 20, cheerful and eager. The other two, Pete and Charlie, were brothers from New Mexico who spoke more Spanish than English. Jack treated her with gruff kindness, making sure she understood she was welcome, that her presence was valued. "You have been good for Maria," he told Nora one evening. "Having another woman to talk to, and Sarah is learning more in a month with you than she learned in a year on her own." But it was Henry's visits that Nora found herself anticipating, though she tried not to examine that anticipation too closely. He came by every few days, ostensibly to coordinate with Jack about water access or shared fence lines, but he always made time to speak with her. Sometimes he brought things from town, a newspaper or a book he thought she might enjoy. Other times he simply sat on the porch after supper, talking about the ranch, the land, his plans for the future. "I am thinking of adding some horses to my operation," he said one evening in early September after she had been at the ranch for 3 weeks. "There is good money in breaking and training, selling to the cavalry or other ranchers." "You know how to break horses?" Nora asked. She sat in a rocking chair, mending one of Jack's shirts while Henry leaned against the porch railing. "I know the basics, but I would need to learn more to do it right. There is a man over in Fort Davis who is supposed to be excellent with horses. I am thinking of spending a few weeks there this winter, learning from him." "That sounds like a solid plan," he smiled. "You sound like a school teacher, very serious and approving." "I was a school teacher briefly before I gave it up for this grand adventure." She set down the mending, looking out at the landscape painted in the colors of sunset. "I taught for 1 year at a girls' academy. It was fine work, but I felt like I was preparing my students for lives I did not want for myself. How could I teach them to be brave and curious when I was choosing safety and convention? And now I am living in a place I never imagined, doing work I never trained for and finding it strangely satisfying." She met his eyes. "I have not written to my family yet. I know I should tell them I am safe, but I cannot quite bring myself to do it." "Why not?" "Because once I write, once I open that door, the pressure will begin. Come home, Nora. Admit this was foolish, Nora. Return to the life you are supposed to have. And I am not ready to defend my choice to stay when I am not entirely sure myself why I am staying." Henry moved to sit on the porch steps, bringing himself closer to her level. "Maybe you are staying because something here feels right, even if you cannot explain it yet. Maybe you are staying because leaving would mean admitting defeat, and you are not someone who defeats easily." He paused. "Or maybe you are staying because you are curious about what might happen next, and that curiosity is worth more than certainty." His words resonated in her chest, touching something true. "You have a habit of saying things that cut right to the center of matters, Mr. Ingram." "Henry," he corrected, as he always did. "And I just say what I see. You are not the kind of woman who makes small choices, Miss Caldwell. You are going to do something significant with your life, one way or another. The only question is whether you are going to do it on your own terms or someone else's. Nora, she said softly. If I am to call you Henry, you should call me Nora. His smile was warm, transforming his face. All right then, Nora, fair is fair. After he left that night, Nora sat on the porch long after dark, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into sleep. Somewhere an owl called, hunting along the river. The wind moved through the cottonwoods with a sound like distant water. She thought about Philadelphia, about the life she had abandoned and felt no regret. Whatever this was, wherever it was leading, it felt more real than anything she had known before. The weeks rolled into months. September gave way to October, and the brutal heat eased into something more tolerable. Nora's initial plan to stay a few weeks, earn some money, and move on began to feel increasingly hollow. She was making a place for herself here, becoming part of the fabric of the ranch. Maria relied on her, Sarah adored her, and Jack treated her like a valued member of the household. And then there was Henry. His visits became more frequent, his reasons for stopping by increasingly transparent. He was not coordinating ranch business when he arrived after supper with a book of poetry he thought she would enjoy. He was not discussing water rights when he spent an afternoon teaching her to ride properly, his hands steadying her as she learned to move with the horse's gait. "You are a natural," he said, walking alongside her horse as she made a circuit of the corral. "You just needed someone to show you how." "Or I needed a reason to learn," Nora replied. In truth, she loved riding, loved the sense of freedom it gave her, the ability to move across this landscape under her own power. "Where would you go?" Henry asked. "If you could ride anywhere, I do not know. Show me something. Show me why you love this place enough to spend 3 years failing before you succeeded." The next Sunday, her half-day off from ranch work, Henry arrived with a packed lunch and 2 horses. "We are going exploring," he announced, "if you are ready for a real ride." They headed west, away from the river, climbing into the rougher terrain that characterized Henry's land. It was not easy country, full of rocky draws and steep slopes, but there was a wild beauty to it that took Nora's breath away. Henry led her to a high point that overlooked both ranches and the river valley, the Mexican mountains visible in the distance. "This is it," he said, dismounting and helping her down. "This is why I stay, why I kept going when common sense said to quit." They sat on a flat rock, sharing the lunch while Henry pointed out landmarks and explained his vision for the land. He talked about sustainability, about working with the land rather than against it, about building something that would last beyond his lifetime. His passion was evident, infectious, and Nora found herself drawn into his dream as if it were her own. "You could do it," she said. "I believe you could make all of this happen." "Could," he agreed, "with time and luck and probably more stubbornness than is healthy." He looked at her, his expression serious. "But it would be easier with a partner, someone who shared the vision, who was willing to work toward it." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken possibilities. Nora's heart beat faster, and she made herself hold his gaze even as her instinct was to look away. "Henry, what are you saying?" "I am saying that you came to Texas looking for something real, something that mattered. I am saying that I look at you and see someone who could build a life out here, who has the strength and the spirit for it." He reached out, taking her hand carefully as if she might startle. "I am saying that what started as me trying to help a stranger has become something else entirely, and I think you feel it too." Nora did feel it, had been feeling it for weeks, but had not let herself acknowledge it fully. The way her mood lifted when she saw him riding up to the ranch. The way his laugh made her smile even when she was tired. The way his opinion mattered to her in a way few people's opinions ever had. "I came here to marry one man," she said slowly. "Is it not strange that I should develop feelings for another so quickly? What does that say about me?" "It says you are alive and open to what life brings you. Harrison Irving was a good man, but you never knew him, never had the chance to build anything real with him. What is between us, Nora? This is real. This is happening right now, right here, and it has nothing to do with letters and arrangements and nothing to do with desperation." "Then what does it have to do with?" "Destiny," Henry said simply. "You thought coming to Texas was a mistake, but maybe it was just destiny taking an unexpected path. Maybe everything that happened brought you here to this moment so we could find each other." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust this feeling that had grown between them, this connection that felt both sudden and inevitable. But doubt lingered, whispering that she was being foolish again, making another impulsive decision that would end in disaster. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Afraid I am substituting you for Harrison, trying to salvage my plan by changing the details. Afraid I am seeing what I want to see instead of what is really there." Henry squeezed her hand gently. "Then we will take our time. No rushing, no pressure. We will let this develop as it should, and if it is real, it will survive your fear and my doubts and whatever else life throws at us." "You have doubts too." "Of course I have doubts. You are educated, cultured, from a world I will never understand. What do I have to offer you besides hard work and an uncertain future? Some days I think you will wake up and wonder what you are doing with a broke rancher in the middle of nowhere when you could have had comfort and security. Those things you think I could have had. They are not what I want. They never were." Nora turned her hand in his, interlacing their fingers. "I want what you described, something real, something that matters. A partner who sees me as I am, not as a decorative piece or a convenient solution to loneliness. I see you, Nora. I see your strength and your courage and your stubborn determination not to be defeated by circumstances. I see someone extraordinary who somehow ended up in my corner of Texas, and I cannot quite believe my good fortune." She leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, a question rather than a declaration. Henry went very still, then responded with a tenderness that made her chest ache. When they separated, his eyes held wonder and something that might have been joy. "We should probably head back," he said, his voice rough. "Before I forget to be a gentleman and ruin my own plan to take this slow." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet, full of promise rather than tension. When they arrived, Maria took one look at Nora's face and smiled knowingly, but she said nothing. That night, Nora finally wrote to her family, a long letter explaining everything that had happened, her work at the ranch, and the possibility that she might have found something in Texas worth staying for. She did not mention Henry by name, but she wrote about hope for the future in a way that would tell her mother everything. The response arrived 3 weeks later, a thick envelope containing letters from her mother, her father, and her sister. Her mother's letter was predictably distressed, begging Nora to come home before she made more mistakes. Her father's was more measured, expressing concern but also a grudging respect for her independence. It was her sister's letter that moved Nora most. Anne wrote that she was envious, that watching Nora leave had made her realize how trapped she felt in her own life, how much she wished for the courage to do something equally bold. "You have become what we all claimed we wanted to be when we were girls," Anne wrote. "Someone who lived on her own terms, who chose adventure over safety. I miss you terribly, but I am so proud of you for becoming this person." Nora showed the letters to Henry the next time he visited, and he read them carefully before handing them back. "Are you going home?" he asked, his voice neutral but his eyes watchful. "This is home," Nora replied. "Or it is becoming home. Philadelphia is where I came from, but it is not where I belong anymore. And your family, will they accept that, eventually? Or they will not, and I will survive that too." She tucked the letters away. "I have learned something important out here, Henry. I have learned that I am stronger than I believed, more capable and less dependent on others' approval than I thought. Whatever happens, I know I can stand on my own." "I have no doubt of that," he smiled. "But the question is not whether you can stand alone. It is whether you want to." November brought cooler weather and preparations for the winter. The ranch settled into a different rhythm, cattle brought closer to headquarters, supplies laid in against potential storms. Nora had been at the Irving Ranch for 3 months, and the question of her future loomed larger with each passing day. Jack broached the subject one evening after supper, with Maria and Henry present. "Miss Caldwell, you have been a blessing to this household, and we would like you to stay on permanent if you are willing. The nephew from Houston has decided to sell the ranch, and the buyer wants to keep the current staff in place. That includes you if you want it. Who is buying the ranch?" Nora asked. Jack smiled. "Henry here. He is consolidating the 2 properties, which will give him the size and water access to really make a go of it." Nora turned to Henry in surprise. "You never mentioned you were buying this place." "I wanted the deal finished before I said anything, did not want to count chickens before they hatched." He looked slightly embarrassed. "I managed to get financing from a bank in El Paso, convinced them I was a decent risk. The sale will be final next month." "That is wonderful news." "Congratulations." "Thank you. But Jack is right. The offer to stay is genuine. I would like to keep the operation running as it is, at least initially, and that means keeping the people who make it work." His eyes met hers. "Particularly the people who have proven themselves indispensable." The weight of the moment settled over Nora. This was the decision point, the place where she could choose to stay or choose to move on. The sensible thing might be to return to Philadelphia, reconcile with her family, find respectable work. But sense had never been what drove her, and it was not going to start now. "I will stay," she said, "for as long as I am useful and welcome." Maria clapped her hands together. "Oh, I am so glad. Sarah will be thrilled." Jack nodded his approval. "Good, that is settled then." But Henry said nothing, just looked at Nora with an expression she could not quite read. Later, after Jack and Maria had retired, he asked her to walk with him. They strolled down toward the river, the night cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky in profusion Nora had never seen in the city. Henry was quiet, his hands shoved in his pockets, and Nora waited for him to speak first. "You said you would stay as long as you are useful and welcome," he finally said. "Does that mean you are staying because of the work, or is there another reason?" "You know the reason, Henry. Do not make me say it when you are the one who suggested we take our time." "Time is one thing. Uncertainty about where we stand is another." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I need to know, Nora. Are you staying because you have feelings for me, or are you staying because it is convenient, because you do not know what else to do?" The vulnerability in his question touched her deeply. This strong, capable man was as uncertain as she was, as afraid of making a mistake. "I am staying because somewhere between arriving in Presidio thinking my life was over and standing here tonight, I fell in love with you," Nora said, the words emerging with quiet certainty. "I am staying because when I imagine my future, you are in it. Not as a replacement for Harrison Irving or a convenient solution to my problems, but as the person I want to build a life with." Henry closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they shone in the starlight. "I love you too." Have loved you almost from the moment you climbed off that wagon looking furious and terrified and determined not to show either. You are the bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I cannot believe you are choosing to stay here, choosing to be with me." He pulled her into his arms, and Nora went willingly, feeling the rightness of it in her bones. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Not an escape from her old life, but a doorway into a new one. Not a mistake corrected, but a destiny revealed. "Marry me," Henry said against her hair. "Not because you traveled across the country expecting to marry someone, but because you want to marry me. Build this ranch with me, build a life with me. I do not have much to offer beyond hard work and honest love, but what I have is yours if you want it." "Yes," Nora said, pulling back to look at his face. "Yes, I will marry you. I will build this life with you, this dream of yours that has somehow become my dream too." His kiss was different from that first tentative touch on the hilltop. This was a promise, a claiming, a celebration. Nora kissed him back with all the hope and joy and relief she felt, grateful beyond words for the strange path that had brought her to this moment. They set the wedding for Christmas, giving Nora time to write to her family and Henry time to make the ranch purchases final. Nora's mother sent a disapproving letter, but also a package containing her grandmother's wedding veil and a grudging blessing. Her father sent money, more than Nora expected, with a note saying he trusted her judgment even if he did not understand her choices. Anne sent yards of beautiful fabric for a wedding dress, and a letter full of excitement and vicarious joy. Maria and Sarah threw themselves into wedding preparations with enthusiasm, and the ranch became a hive of activity. Nora sewed her dress in the evenings, simple but elegant, suitable for a ranch wedding. Henry built furniture for the house he was constructing on a piece of land that overlooked both ranches, a home for their future. The night before the wedding, Maria hosted a gathering at the main ranch house, inviting the ranch hands and neighbors from the surrounding area. It was a simple celebration, but it was full of warmth and good wishes. Nora found herself standing on the porch at one point, watching Henry talk with Jack about cattle prices, and felt a wave of contentment wash over her. "Are you happy, miss?" Sarah appeared at her elbow, looking up with earnest eyes. "I am, Sarah, very happy." "I am glad you came here, even though it was because of sad reasons. You made everything better. Mama is happier and Henry smiles more, and I am learning so much." Nora hugged the girl, thinking about the chain of events that had brought her to this place. Harrison Irving's death had seemed like the final proof that coming to Texas was a mistake, but it had been the opposite. It had been the beginning of everything real and true in her life. The wedding took place in the small church in Presidio, with the minister officiating and most of the town in attendance. Nora wore her simple dress and her grandmother's veil, carrying wildflowers that Maria and Sarah had gathered. Henry stood at the front of the church in his Sunday best, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, and when the minister pronounced them married, Henry kissed her with tender reverence that made several of the older women dab at their eyes. The celebration afterward was raucous and joyful, with music and dancing and more food than Nora thought possible. As the sun set on their wedding day, Henry drove Nora to their new house, carried her across the threshold despite her laughing protests. The interior was sparse still, containing only the furniture he had built and a few essentials, but it was theirs. Their home, their future, their place to build from. "Are you certain about this?" Henry asked as they stood in the main room, the last light of day painting everything in shades of gold. "Certain you want this life, this place, me?" "I have never been more certain of anything," Nora replied. "I came to Texas thinking I was making a mistake, but you proved it was destiny. "This is where I belong, Henry. With you, in this place we are going to build together." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery and a promise. Afterward, lying in Henry's arms in their bed, listening to the night sounds of their ranch, Nora thought about the long journey from Philadelphia to this moment. Every step, every doubt, every fear had been necessary to bring her here, to this place of absolute certainty. The winter passed in a blur of work and joy. Nora learned the rhythm of ranch life, became adept at tasks that would have seemed impossible months ago. She could ride confidently now, help with the cattle when needed, manage the household accounts, treat minor injuries and illnesses. Henry included her in every decision about the ranch, valued her opinions and ideas. In February, Nora realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with a complex mix of emotions, joy and fear and wonder all tangled together. She told Henry one evening as they sat by the fire, and his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He pulled her into his arms, his face bright with amazement and love. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Nora asked, though she could see the answer in his expression. Happy does not begin to cover it. Terrified, ecstatic, overwhelmed, grateful, all of it at once. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "A whole new person, Nora, a person we made together. I hope I know what I am doing. I have no experience with babies. We will figure it out together, same as we figure everything else out. Between us and Maria, we will manage." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and as Nora's body changed, she felt increasingly connected to this land and this life. She was growing a child just as the ranch was growing, both requiring patience and care and faith in the future. Henry was attentive and tender, insisting she rest more even as she insisted she was perfectly capable of working. In early October, after a long labor attended by Maria and the doctor from Presidio, Nora gave birth to a healthy boy. They named him Thomas after Henry's father, and he came into the world squalling with impressive lung power. Henry held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face, and Nora felt her heart expand to accommodate this new, overwhelming love. "He is perfect," Henry whispered. "You are perfect. I cannot believe this is my life." The first year of Thomas's life was exhausting and wonderful. Nora learned to function on minimal sleep, to nurse while managing ranch accounts, to soothe a crying baby while directing the household. Maria was invaluable, teaching her the skills her own mother had never passed on, and Sarah was a devoted helper. The ranch flourished under Henry's management. The consolidated property gave him the resources to implement his ideas, and by the second year of their marriage, the operation was solidly profitable. He added the horse breeding program he had dreamed of and proved to have a gift for it. Word spread about the quality of his stock, and buyers came from as far as Fort Worth. On Thomas's second birthday, Nora discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news felt less overwhelming, more like a natural progression. Their daughter was born the following spring, a calm baby they named Catherine. With 2 children and a thriving ranch, life was full to bursting. But it was a good fullness, a richness that satisfied something deep in Nora's soul. She thought sometimes about the woman she had been in Philadelphia, the restless girl who answered a mail-order bride advertisement in a fit of desperation. That girl had been searching for something she could not name, and had somehow found it in the least expected place. Years passed, marked by the changing seasons and the growing children. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved the horses and followed his father everywhere. Catherine was curious and bold, asking endless questions and exploring every corner of the ranch. When Thomas was 6 and Catherine 4, Nora gave birth to twin boys, James and William, who brought chaos and laughter in equal measure. The house Henry had built was expanded twice to accommodate their growing family. The ranch continued to prosper, becoming one of the most respected operations in the region. Nora's family eventually came to visit, her mother's disapproval melting in the face of her grandchildren and the obvious happiness of her daughter. Anne came alone the following year and ended up staying for 6 months, finding her own fresh start in Texas by marrying a rancher from Fort Davis. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Henry and Nora rode up to the hilltop where he had first told her he loved her. They left the children with Maria, taking a rare day just for themselves. The view was as spectacular as Nora remembered, the ranches spread below them, the river winding through the valley. "You ever regret it?" Henry asked, as they sat on the same rock where he had proposed so many years ago. "Do you ever wish you had made a different choice?" Nora considered the question seriously, as it deserved. "I regret the worry I caused my family. I regret that Harrison Irving died before he could find the companionship he was seeking. But do I regret coming to Texas? Do I regret marrying you?" "Never, not for a single moment. Even when the twins destroyed your kitchen last week," she laughed. "Even then. This life, Henry, it is everything I wanted without knowing how to ask for it. It is real and hard and beautiful and mine. Ours. I think about that day I rode into Presidio and found you standing there, looking lost and furious. If I had been delayed by even an hour, someone else might have helped you. We might never have met. But you were not delayed. You were exactly where you needed to be when you needed to be there. Just like I was." Nora leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in the silence that had grown between them over years of partnership. "I thought I was making a mistake coming here, the biggest mistake of my life. But you proved it was destiny, not error. Everything that happened, even Harrison's death, even my fear and doubt, all of it was leading me to you." "To us," Henry corrected, wrapping his arm around her. "To this family, this life we built together." They sat watching the sun move across the sky, neither in a hurry to return to the demands of ranch and children. There would be time for that, time for all the work that filled their days. Right now, they had this moment of peace, this chance to remember how they started and appreciate how far they had come. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, they rode back home, back to the noise and chaos and love of their 4 children, back to the ranch that represented everything they had built together. Nora helped Maria prepare supper while Henry cleaned up the mess the twins had made in the barn. Catherine set the table with exaggerated care while Thomas tried to explain horse breeding to his younger brothers with limited success. After the children were in bed, their voices finally quiet, Henry and Nora sat on the porch of their home, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. These moments of quiet together were precious, stolen from the edges of busy days. "I received a letter from the bank in El Paso," Henry said. "They are impressed with our success, suggested we might consider expanding further, maybe acquiring the Morrison place to the north. What do you think?" "I think we have enough. I think what we have built is exactly the right size for what we want our life to be. Big enough to support the family and provide good work for good people, small enough that we do not lose ourselves in the managing of it." Nora nodded. "I agree. We have what we need, what we wanted. More is not always better." "You have changed me, you know," Henry said softly. "When you arrived, I was still that desperate young man trying to prove something, trying to build an empire to show everyone I was worth something. But you taught me to value what I have, to see success in terms of happiness rather than size or profit. You taught me things too. You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear but action despite it. You taught me that home is not a place but a choice. made new every day. You taught me that love is not what you feel but what you do, shown in 1,000 small gestures and daily commitments. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, looking out over the land they had built a life on. In the distance, a coyote called, and from the barn came the soft sounds of horses settling for the night. It was an ordinary evening, unremarkable in every way except that it was theirs, this life they had chosen and created together. The years continued their steady march. Thomas grew into a tall young man who shared his father's way with horses and his mother's analytical mind. At 18, he started working the ranch as a full partner, bringing new ideas and energy. Catherine proved to have her mother's love of teaching and spent her school years educating the children of ranch hands and neighboring families in a small schoolhouse Henry built for her. The twins were terrors, wild and loving in equal measure, but they worked hard and grew into fine young men. Nora watched her children become adults with the bittersweetness every mother knows. She was proud of who they were becoming, but she missed the small hands that used to grip her skirts, the high voices calling for her. Henry aged well, his dark hair silvering at the temples, his body still strong from daily ranch work. They moved through their days with the ease of long partnership, often knowing what the other needed without words. On their 25th anniversary, their children surprised them with a party, inviting friends and neighbors from all over the region. The celebration was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns strung from the trees. As Nora looked around at the gathering, at the community they had become part of, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Anne was there with her husband and their 3 children. Jack and Maria, now retired but still living in the foreman's house, held court near the food tables. Sarah, married to a rancher from Alpine, had brought her own family. The ranch hands, both current and former, mingled with neighbors and friends. It was a testament to the life they had built, the connections they had forged. Speech. Someone called, and the cry was taken up by others. Henry stood, pulling Nora up beside him. All right. I will keep this short because the food is getting cold and Rosa worked too hard on it for us to let it go to waste." Laughter rippled through the crowd. 25 years ago, I rode into Presidio on an ordinary afternoon and found the most extraordinary woman standing by the stage depot. She was supposed to marry someone else, had traveled across the country for a future that no longer existed. I tried to help because it seemed like the right thing to do, never imagining that helping her would be the best decision I ever made. He looked at Nora, his eyes warm. "You changed everything, Nora. You took a struggling ranch and a stubborn man and made them into something better than they had any right to be. You gave me children I love more than I thought possible to love anyone. You gave me partnership and challenge and support and grace. You took a mistake and proved it was destiny." Nora felt tears prick her eyes. "You are going to make me cry in front of everyone." "That is my right after 25 years. He kissed her forehead. "Thank you for saying yes to this life. Thank you for staying when you had every reason to go. Thank you for being exactly who you are." The crowd applauded, and someone struck up music. Henry led Nora into a dance, and soon others joined them. As they moved together with the ease of long practice, Nora thought about all the dances they had shared, all the moments that made up a marriage. The joyful dances and the difficult ones, the celebrations and the sorrows, all of it woven together into the fabric of their shared life. Later, when the party had wound down and the last guests had departed, Nora and Henry walked down to the river, following a path they had worn over decades of evening strolls. The night was clear and mild, and the water moved past with its eternal murmur. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Nora asked. When I said I had made a mistake coming here, I said you were not foolish for answering a call to adventure, that it took courage. You were right, but you were also wrong in the best possible way." Henry looked at her questioningly. "It was not courage that brought me here initially. It was desperation and restlessness and a desire to escape. But staying, building this life with you, raising our children, that took real courage. The courage to trust in something I had not planned for, to build something from the ruins of my original intention. And you have never regretted it. How could I regret the best decision I ever made?" Nora squeezed his hand. "I came to Texas thinking I was making a terrible mistake. You proved, day after day, year after year, that it was destiny. Our destiny, written in ways neither of us could have predicted but both of us worked to create." They stood by the river in comfortable silence, two people who had chosen each other and kept choosing each other through all the days of their lives. The mistakes and the destinies, the plans and the surprises, the sorrows and the joys, all of it had brought them here, to this moment of peace beside the eternal river. As they turned to walk back to the house, back to the life they had built together, Nora thought about the girl who had stepped off the stagecoach in Presidio 25 years ago. That girl had been so certain she had made an error, so convinced that coming to Texas was the wrong choice. But that girl had not yet met Henry Ingram. She had not yet learned that sometimes the wrong path leads you exactly where you need to be, that sometimes what looks like a mistake is actually destiny revealing itself in unexpected ways. The years that followed were gentler, marked by grandchildren and the satisfaction of work well done. Thomas married a girl from Marfa and brought her to the ranch, preparing to take over the operation eventually. Catherine continued teaching, touching the lives of dozens of children. The twins both took to ranching like their father and brother, energetic and innovative. Nora and Henry began to step back from the daily operation, trusting the next generation while remaining available for advice and support. They traveled some, visiting Anne in Fort Davis and making a trip back to Philadelphia to see Nora's aging parents. But they were always happy to return home, to the ranch that had become the center of their world. On a spring morning just after their 30th anniversary, Nora woke to find Henry already up, standing at the window looking out over the ranch. She joined him, slipping her arm around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" "About how far we have come. About how this place has grown and changed, but also stayed the same in the ways that matter. Are you happy with it? With how everything turned out?" Henry turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands. "Happy does not begin to cover what I feel. Grateful, blessed, content, fulfilled. You gave me all of this, Nora. This family, this life, this sense of purpose and peace. I was just a stubborn cowboy with more ambition than sense, but you saw something worth believing in. You were never just anything, Henry. You were always exactly who you were supposed to be. I was the one who needed to become someone new, and you gave me the space and support to do that." They stood together in the morning light, two people who had found each other through the strangest of circumstances and built something beautiful from that unlikely beginning. The mail-order bride who thought she was making a mistake. The cowboy who proved it was destiny. Together they had created a legacy that would outlast them both in the land they had nurtured, the children they had raised, the community they had served. As the sun climbed higher, painting the landscape in shades of gold, Nora thought about destiny and choice, about how they interweave in ways impossible to untangle. She had chosen to answer that advertisement, chosen to board that train, chosen to stay when everything fell apart. But something larger than choice had been at work too, guiding her steps, leading her to the exact place she needed to be. The ranch hummed with morning activity. Cattle lowed in the distance. Horses moved in the corral. The sounds of family echoed from the main house where Thomas and his wife were preparing breakfast for their children. It was an ordinary morning, made extraordinary only by the realization of how many such mornings had come before and would come after, each one a small miracle, each one a gift. Henry and Nora dressed and walked to the main house for breakfast with the family, slipping into the comfortable chaos of multiple generations sharing a meal. Grandchildren climbed on their laps, demanding stories. Thomas discussed ranch business with his father. Catherine arrived with her husband, bringing fresh bread from town. The twins argued good-naturedly about the best way to manage the spring roundup. This was the destiny Nora had stumbled into, the life she had built from the ashes of her original plan. It was better than anything she could have imagined sitting in that Philadelphia parlor so many years ago. Better because it was real, earned through hard work and sustained through love. Better because it was hers and Henry's, created together from nothing but determination and hope. After breakfast, Nora and Henry walked out to the cemetery plot they had established on a hill overlooking the ranch. They visited Jack's grave first. He had passed 3 years ago, peacefully in his sleep, leaving a hole in their lives that still ached. Maria was in town staying with Sarah, but she visited this spot weekly, tending the flowers she had planted. He would be proud of how the ranch is running, Henry said, standing before the simple headstone. Thomas has his gift for managing people, getting the best out of everyone. They stood in silence for a moment, paying respect to the man who had welcomed Nora that first difficult day, who had given her work and dignity when she needed both desperately. As they walked back toward the house, their hands clasped together, Nora felt the completeness of her life settle around her like a blessing. Every choice, every challenge, every joy and sorrow had led to this moment, this deep sense of rightness and peace. The sun was high now, the day unfolding with all its demands and pleasures. There was work to do, always work on a ranch, but it was good work, meaningful work. There were children and grandchildren to love, a partner to share the journey with, a community to be part of. Nora thought about that terrified girl on the stagecoach, certain she was making a mistake. She wished she could reach back through time and tell that girl not to be afraid, that everything was going to work out better than she could imagine. But perhaps that fear had been necessary, part of the journey that made the destination so sweet. "What are you smiling about?" Henry asked, noticing her expression. "Just thinking about destiny and how it works in mysterious ways." "Not so mysterious. You came to Texas. I helped you. We fell in love. Seems pretty straightforward to me," Nora laughed. "When you put it that way, it does sound simple. The best things usually are, once you get all the complications out of the way." They reached the house, and Henry held the door for her, a small courtesy he had extended for 30 years. As Nora stepped through into the home they had built and filled with love, she felt the weight of gratitude for every step that had brought her here. She had thought she was making a mistake, the biggest mistake of her life, coming to this harsh land to marry a stranger. But Henry Ingram had proved her wrong, had shown her that what seemed like error was actually destiny unfolding exactly as it should. Not the destiny she had planned for, but the destiny she needed, the one that fit her like the sky fits the horizon. The mail-order bride became a rancher's wife, a mother, a teacher, a pillar of her community. The struggling cowboy became a successful rancher, a husband, a father, a man who built something lasting. Together, they became more than either could have been alone, proving that sometimes the wrong path leads you exactly where you need to be, and sometimes the greatest mistakes turn out to be destiny in disguise. Years later, when their grandchildren asked how they met, Nora and Henry would tell the story together, trading details back and forth with the ease of long practice. They told about the stagecoach and the terrible news, about the offer of help and the decision to stay. They told about falling in love despite all the reasons not to, about building a life from nothing but hope and hard work. "So grandmother came here to marry someone else?" the grandchildren would ask, eyes wide with the romance of it. "She did," Henry would confirm. "But that man died, and instead she got stuck with me." "Not stuck," Nora would correct, as she always did. "Blessed. I was blessed with you, with this life, with all of it." And she meant it, every word. The mistake that was not a mistake. The destiny that revealed itself in the most unexpected way. The cowboy who proved that love could grow in the harsh soil of disappointment, that beauty could bloom in the desert, that home was not a place you came from but a place you built, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of faith at a time. Their story became part of the ranch's history, told and retold, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when everything seems to be going wrong. That sometimes you have to lose your way to find your true path. That sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning, if you are brave enough to stay and see it through. As the sun set on another day at the ranch, casting long shadows across the land they had worked and loved, Nora and Henry sat on their porch, hands clasped, hearts full. The mistakes and the destinies had all led here, to this perfect ordinary moment, this life they had chosen and been chosen by. And if they could go back and change anything, make different choices, avoid the pain and confusion of those early days, they would not. Because every step, even the wrong ones, had been necessary to bring them here, to this place of love and peace and absolute belonging. The mail-order bride had found her home. The cowboy had found his partner. Together they had found their destiny, not in spite of the mistakes but because of them, proving that sometimes the wrong decision is the rightest thing you will ever do, if you trust the journey and stay open to where it leads. Their love story was written in the land itself, in every fence post and water trough, in every building and every blade of grass, a testament to the power of choosing love, choosing faith, choosing to believe that what seems like error might actually be destiny, waiting patiently to be recognized and embraced.